Yeah.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Doing well? Doing well? So I got a question before we start. So why are you guys here? Because I told you to come here?
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course. Any other reasons? So why are you here?
Learn about
Nothing.
nutrition.
Learn about nutrition, okay? So why?
Better life, I guess. Yeah.
Better life, okay.
Yeah, way to live better.
You are what you eat.
Cheers.
You are what you eat?
Yeah.
Because even like before we're going to talk about any content related to the, what we're going to talk about, you obviously have to have the why. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to go to the gym, I've been to the gym for a while, what's your why? I want to look better, I want to feel better, I want to have a better functioning body, I want to be able to do it more with my kids and my grandkids, so you got to figure out that why first off, okay? I'm going to share a little story. You guys have heard this before. So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, has anybody ever heard of Sports Center?
Mhm.
Okay, you guys heard. So like Sports Center is like a previous day's. It's a recap of the previous day's sporting events. Okay, so I get up at 5, 6 years old, watch Sports Center. I get up about 5:57 or 5:58 a.m. so I can watch 6 o'clock show. So this is a half-hour segment. So I'd watch 6 to 6:30. I might grab something to eat in between. I'd watch 6:30 to 7. Then I'd watch about 7 to 7:20, and then I'd go to the bus stop. So I'm watching the same thing basically 2.5 times, okay? So I did this every day. And it was nothing more than I had a fascination and a love for just the sports, and I could name off all these statistics. When I got to school, we started doing like multiplication tables, and I was all right. But once we got to sevens, I was like 7, 14, 21, 28. And the teacher asked my parents, why can he do sevens so well? Any ideas why that was?
Football.
Football touchdowns, okay? So just by me having that repetition of watching and learning, I was able to do that just like nothing, okay? So what we're going to talk about, it's not all or nothing, okay? It takes time and repetition to be able to implement this stuff. And the other thing with all or nothing, because a lot of people say, hey, I don't want to give up the beer, the cigarettes, and everything else, because if I do that, if I do anything else that's good, it's just going to cancel it out. That's not the case, because all or nothing only works in action potentials and pregnancy, okay? So it's not all or nothing when it comes to what you eat, okay? So why does it matter? And that's why I asked you the why. There's a lot of reasons, okay? We got to start out with these things because they're important, okay? So as a species, we're basically the sickest species that's ever existed, okay? You can look through all mammals, anything. Right now, we're basically the sickest species that's ever existed on the planet, okay? So we got to figure out how do we get there, okay? Our children, not even anything comparable to other generations. Our children are far more sicker, more allergies, more asthma, more obesity, more everything when it comes to disease and chronic disease. Chronic illness, no comparison. Never been anything like this before as far as when we look back at other generations, hunter-gatherers, things like that. Now, a key with this, okay, when we think about health, how many times do you hear that your health problems related to your genes? A lot, right? So how much do you think that really is? 20%? And we're going to talk about that. Chronic illness, about 80% due to lifestyle choice. Okay? So when we think heart disease, cancer, a lot of these different variables, diabetes, a lot of times we do that to ourselves. Okay? About 80% lifestyle choices, and we'll talk more about that and I'll get back to the genes. Now this is something like with conventional medicine, people who get ill for the most part stay chronically ill. So if you get chronically ill, do you hear about a lot of people that recover from chronic illness?
Not as often.
Not as often. Is it possible?
Yes.
Absolutely possible. But for the most part, with conventional treatment, typical treatment, people that are sick, they unfortunately stay sick, okay? Now we got to talk about what we typically do, okay? So since the 1960s, this is per person, we have about a 55 times increase of the amount of medications that we take. 55 times. Since the 1960s, we spend more and more money every year on doctors and hospitals, drugs, surgeries. But how healthy are we as a country? We're way towards the bottom, okay? So World Health Organization, top 38 industrialized nations, where do you think we rank 1 through 38?
38.
You guys go right to the bottom, okay?
No.
So 37 out of 38, okay? So we're way at the bottom. So we got to figure out, well, what are we doing that's leading us to be way at the bottom? And we got to be able to change that, okay? But here's the thing. We're taught that drugs and surgery are a health solution. Because if I open up a magazine, if I'm watching TV ads, now about 1 in 3 ads is a drug ad, okay? That we're taught that that's our solution, okay? The whole purpose of a drug is to do what?
To fix you
To fix you, okay?
without
It might-
minimum effort.
And it may do that to an extent, okay? Because the goal is obviously it's going to make you feel better, okay? But when we're talking about health, just making you feel better may not make you healthier, okay? Because it actually set up to block certain pathways in the body, okay? Not meant to make you better. It's meant to block things, okay? So we got to figure out if that's blocking things, is the problem really getting better? Not really. Because if you're taking, say, a blood pressure medication, when are you told to come off of it? Never. Okay? So we got to kind of backtrack and say, hey, well, maybe that's not quite the answer. Maybe there's something I can do to make my body better. Okay? I'm not saying stop your blood pressure medication right now, but there might be things you can do to get off of it. Okay? So the magic drug. Another thing about diabetes, so this is when we're talking about illness. So type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. And it's still called that at times, but why did they change the name?
Because children are being affected.
Yeah, because it's onsetting in children. So instead of adult onset, type 2. Okay? So again, just got to have a baseline of where our country is right now. So this is an interesting quote. Almost no one knows what the definition of health really is. Therefore, that which they believe about health cannot be true. What's your definition of health? What's health to you?
Not taking any medication at all.
Disease-free.
Being
Disease-free.
healthy all the time.
Okay.
No disease,
No disease?
no aches, no pains.
No aches, no pains? So if I look at, if I were to look in a medical dictionary, say, health is a state of physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease, okay? Because most people are like, if I feel good, then I must be healthy. Is that true? Not necessarily, because we see George next door, he's mowing the lawn, he feels good, and all of a sudden the next day he has a heart attack and unfortunately passed away. So was he really healthy that day before? Not necessarily, okay? There's one key word, function. If everything in my body's functioning at 100% and well, am I healthy?
Yes.
Absolutely, unequivocally. Okay, but everything has to be functioning at 100%. Okay, so as far as our health, when we're talking about the definition, to believe what, like we talked about with the ads and such, it's hard to believe what health is if we're come up with a wrong understanding from the get-go. Going back to the genes, okay? So there's one important question that we really have to answer. We're going to get to a lot of the stuff as far as the food and the nutrition, but we have to have that baseline, okay? I have bad genes, and that's why we have the sickness, okay? So the question here is, why are we so sick, and what do we need to do to get well? Okay, that's one really, really important question that we have to answer with what we're talking about. So a couple things. Harvard, okay? So everybody knows who Harvard is, right? So they did a study, okay? And they analyzed it because they were trying to see how much do genes play a role in our overall health. They said about 1 to 2% of all disease is related to genes.
Even if families have histories and
And we'll get to that part, okay? Even with the family history, say about 1 to 2%. So what was the other 98% then?
Environmental.
Lifestyle
You've heard it before.
choices.
You guys got it, okay? So environmental, okay? So that means that I would say raise a certain way, I do these type of things, or I create these habits. That leads to the outcome, okay? So so the thing as far as family history, I'm going to talk about something that's really interesting as far as family history, okay? So there's a guy, his name's Dr. Richard Goldberg. He was part of the Ohio State colon cancer research. That university, they don't do much good, so at least they did something good. I'm kidding. But, no, we like Ohio State, okay? But as far as what he was doing is he was analyzing actually people in Japan. He had a large study group in, like, Japan, colon cancer almost, now it's starting to, but almost didn't exist when he was doing this study, okay? So he's like, well, how come people in Japan don't have colon cancer, okay? So he actually started watching people as they transition to the U.S. Once they started transitioning to the U.S., guess what started happening within about 5 years? They started getting colon cancer. Okay, so the thing with that is not necessarily their genes didn't change in 5 years. Their environment did. Okay, and what they were doing and how they were acting, and obviously their lifestyle. Here's another thing. This goes back to the family history. So this was a study done with identical twins versus adopted children, and they're showing with the study that even though twins were identical, the twins that were adopted actually were having more of the similar type components as far as disease, okay? So the reason being is the adopted children were kind of forced into into a more similar environment with their health than the identical twins. So they actually had more of the commonalities being adopted than the identical, okay? So just again, showing how genes don't necessarily play a role in your health outcomes. There is something we're going to just touch on called epigenetics, and don't let that word scare you. So is sickness genetically determined? Are we born inherently weak with genetic defects? For us to actually have our gene pool change, it would take about 50 generations. It's crazy, right? Okay. So 50 generations for our genes to be able to change. Okay. This long word epigenetics, what this means is we can have a predisposition. Okay. But what that means is we get a choice if we get to turn that gene on. Okay. So for example, if I decide I want to eat sugar all the time, that might be more of a predisposition to having this potential outcome. But I have a choice, and my genes don't always necessarily dictate what's going to happen. Okay. But there can be some other factors inside of that. So you see this is a fish tank. Looks kind of blurry, right? So let's say your fish are sick and they live there. What do?
Change the water.
Change the water? I think that's the best route.
You clean out the tank, you filter through the it depends on if it's fresh water or salt water. You change the filters and you
take the fish out.
you
Change the
Take the
environment.
fish out? You change the environment. Because the thing is, would you give them drugs?
No.
Because you guys laugh, right? Okay. Or perform little fish surgeries? No. You wouldn't do that, because the main thing is you got to change the environment to increase how things work, okay? Just like you wouldn't blame sickness or, sickness on their genes. I don't know if you remember, this was, I think, the 70s, like the Great Lakes there have an issue with like DDT. So the birds were getting ill and then they produced egg shells that were really, really thin. So it's the same concept. You don't think, hey, the genes are causing the fish and the birds to have issues. It's, what's happening with the environment, okay? But it's just, what I want you guys to do is I want you to think differently, okay? I don't want you, honestly, don't believe anything I say. I want you to do your own research, okay? So everything that I say, look into it yourself. I'm just giving you some information. So we're going to go a little bit more into the food, okay? So the purpose of tonight, what we really want to talk about is ways to boost your metabolism. For some people, maybe how to gain weight from a muscle standpoint, how to lose weight, how to prevent disease. So we're going to incorporate everything into the talk that we're doing tonight, okay? So when we're talking about food, there's basically three. Oh, I'm giving them all away. You might have looked already, okay? So there's actually four. There's three different food types, okay? One of them's protein. You know the other two?
Grain.
Carbohydrates, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, okay? And there's a third one because it has a little bit different amount of calories per gram.
Dairy.
No.
What would we consider protein?
Some you guys know it. You're smiling, okay? Alcohol, okay? So alcohol has a little bit different ratios, okay? So we got protein, fats, carbohydrates, okay? So those are called macronutrients. Those are the basis of what we eat as far as a calorie standpoint. Now we also have something called micronutrients. And I wrote, macronutrients and the micronutrients. So do you guys know what micronutrients are? Obviously micro means small. There you go, vitamins and minerals, perfect, okay? So the macronutrients are the stuff we get calories from. The micronutrients are essential, so we got, say, vitamin D or selenium or zinc or things that we need, but we don't necessarily get calories from them. So those are the two differences there, okay? So when we're looking at the different types of food groups, here's some things I want you to think about just looking at these, okay? So protein, so some things that it does. So protein actually can help jumpstart a metabolism, definitely important for building muscle, okay? Another thing is protein really increases something called your satiety level. Has anybody ever heard of that word? Satiety? Okay. Feeling of fullness. Okay. So it digests slow, so it causes a feeling of fullness for a little bit longer than, say, something like a carbohydrate, which is important. Say if someone wants to lose weight, they have a higher protein intake. Carbohydrates, they play a large role with insulin, which we're going to come back to, dopamine, and they can really influence food cravings. Okay. Has anybody ever heard of dopamine? Okay. So dopamine, how have you guys heard of it?
Makes you happy.
Makes you happy. Okay. So it's a feel-good chemical. Okay. So a lot of times people get addicted to carbohydrates because of the dopamine response. Okay. You can get a dopamine response from exercising. You can get a dopamine response from cigarettes. You can get a dopamine response from a lot of different things. Our body, this is something that's genetic, is we crave dopamine. So there's different ways that we can get it, and people always try to find different ways. It may be doing something that you love. It may be, like I said, maybe eating a certain food. Okay, so there's different ways to get it. Generally, as far as your health and longevity, if you do things that are healthy to get more dopamine, obviously you're going to have a better outcome. Okay,
Runner's high.
like a runner's high. There you go. That releases dopamine. Okay. Insulin. This becomes an issue with weight gain. Okay. So carbohydrates affect your pancreas and cause the body to release insulin. You guys heard of that? Okay, big time factor with type 2 diabetics. Okay, so if someone eats a lot of sugar, something that processes into sugar quick, your pancreas has to release a ton of insulin. Okay? If it always has to do that again and again and again, what happens? Just like anything in the body,
It wears out.
it wears out. Okay, if it wears out, that can create type 2 diabetes. Okay, and if it stops producing insulin in the pancreas, that's type 1. Okay, is type 2 diabetes reversible?
Yes.
You think?
It's type one.
Sorry, it's type 2. Is type 2 reversible?
Yes.
Yeah, about 99.9%. Okay, so anybody who has type 2, is it easy to reverse type 2 diabetes? No. Not easy, okay, but it can be done almost 100% of the time. Okay, takes a lot of work. We might not get into a whole lot of that yet tonight, but it is possible. So there is hope with something like that as well, because type 2 diabetes can be devastating for a lot of people. Okay, but insulin it's basically what's called an anabolic hormone. So it can be used for positive things with weight gain as well, but for the most part with our society, it creates a lot of problems. Fat, okay, so fat's important for your brain, your nerve system, which controls what in your body?
Your discs and
Everything. Yeah.
everything.
So about 60%, check this out, for about 60% of your brain is fat and cholesterol. So do we need those two things?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Okay. So very important for your brain, your nerve system, your heart, your hormones. Okay. So if someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna eat a really low-fat diet," you're gonna jack your hormones up. Okay. They're gonna be way out of balance. And it's actually important for fat loss. Okay. You guys know eating fat's important for fat loss. Okay. We'll talk more about that because it can kind of be a misnomer for some people. Because in the 1970s, we started having more and more of the low-fat diet, and guess what happened to our country?
Got better.
We got bigger and bigger. Okay, so obviously that's not working. So I got two pyramids. So if we're in school, this is one that most people probably saw and learned. Okay, so this is a food pyramid. So we got a bunch of grains and breads at the bottom. Then comes fruits and vegetables, dairy, meats, and then oils at the top. Okay. So if you ate this way all the time, here's what would happen. Your metabolism would slow. You'd have a low feeling of fullness, low satiety factor. You'd have low energy. You'd increase depression, weight gain, inflammation, blood sugar, create disease, and illicit hormone issues. Does that sound good? That's what we're taught. Even now, I mean, a lot of dietitians are taught this way. Okay? Let's look at this other side. Okay? Before I read it, so this other side boosts metabolism, increases energy, decreases inflammation, increases memory, improves body composition, high feeling of fullness. That sounds better, right? Okay. So here's what this thing says, okay? So at the bottom we have vegetables, okay? As we come up here, we have fish, seafood, meat, poultry, eggs, okay? Then we have fats. So instead of just being this little tip, we have a good amount of fats we're trying to consume. And you could even probably move this down here if you wanted to. Fruits and berries, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, okay? What happened to this part?
History.
It disappeared.
It's not
Okay?
there.
Now, the thing is, we're going to talk, and I got another talk coming up. I'm going to talk a little bit more detail as far as just the foods itself, but we're not going to say never have this stuff, okay? Because what happens when you deprive somebody of something?
That's all they
One more.
want.
They quit and they want it more, okay? So that never, ever, ever works, okay? So, but if you're looking for, say, optimal health, or you want to be able to change the way you eat, that's huge, okay? Does anybody have any questions on these? Because I know these can create a little bit of question. No?
The fruits and berries are higher because of the natural sugar?
Yeah, that would be the key. Are they healthy? Absolutely, okay? But that'd be the major reason.
Okay.
It's just going to have a little bit more of a blood sugar response. Yeah, but very, very healthy. And there are things like, for example, if you have like not to get too much into this yet, but like say pineapple, banana, watermelon, those actually have a little bit more of the sugar content than say like a lot of the berries would, or maybe even like an apple or something like that. So there can be even variances inside of that.
And it wouldn't matter if it's whole wheat pasta, whole wheat or whole grain bread. It's just less and less.
It is better, okay? Because the thing is, it's the rate that it's processed. So if you have something that say with like a lot of white, bleached, enriched, those are things to look at on a label. As far as the flour, then your body's going to release more of that insulin, right away versus the whole wheat. So it's going to digest a little bit slower, okay? There's even other alternatives now like brown rice pasta, quinoa pasta. Some people use like spaghetti squash and things like that. It's a better option though, without a doubt, because that's where it's like when I said it's not all or nothing ever, because that's not the way things work. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely a better option when you're looking at things like that. Has anybody ever heard of this, JAMA? Okay, so this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association. So they had a big group of participants follow these 3 different diets for 30 days, okay? So one diet, low fat. One was more of a moderate fat, moderate carbohydrate. The other one is a high fat, basically a high fat, low carbohydrate diet, okay? So this is, you have the chart in your pamphlet there, but just has the different percentages. So the bottom group here was about 60% of their diet was fat, okay? And then the low fat diet, about 20%. And about 60% carbs, where this one is about 10%, okay? So here's what happened after the 30 days. So all the diets had the same amount of calories. So triglycerides, are you guys familiar with triglycerides? So triglycerides average 66 in the low carbohydrate, high fat group. Triglycerides averaged 107 in the low fat group. So one of the major things, like when you get a blood panel, triglycerides, a measure of basically the health, you want that number lower. But the 66 in the low carbohydrate, high fat group, 107 in the low fat group. Okay, so the group that ate more fat had the better outcomes. Okay, interesting, right?
But they were eating short ribs. They were eating the healthy fats.
Not necessarily. In this study, it was kind of wide open, believe it or not. So, but there is better.
There's a
but
difference between eating ribs and.
There's complete difference, but according to that, it was just to have those percentages based upon, it could have been, yeah. So, but just that different change in general. Okay, but yeah, there's definitely a difference. Also, those in the low carb, high fat diet, they burn the most calories. Then that word insulin, which plays a big role with weight gain. So they had the biggest improvement in insulin sensitivity, which means their body's ability to adapt to that insulin, which is something you want, twice as much as the low fat group, okay? So again, if my pancreas has to work really, really hard because I'm eating more carbohydrates, it's going to create more inflammation in the body, and it's going to cause less of the insulin sensitivity, so my body wants to actually store stuff more, okay? And if you guys have any questions, feel free, okay? So this is actually really interesting. So healthiest people to ever live. So there's pictures here. You guys know who it is?
The Inuits or the.
Inuits. Okay. You guys know why they were healthy?
High
They eat
fat, low
blubber.
protein.
A lot of fish
Okay.
and fish oil.
Fish
Not
oil.
natural.
So Inuit people, okay, blubber breakfast, blubber lunch, blubber dinner, okay,
Blubber snakes.
blubber snacks, okay. Now if you might get a little, otherwise if they don't have blubber, they're having what? Protein.
Blubber.
Okay.
Or
Blubber and protein,
or
okay.
salmon or
Where
trout
you get protein.
or they were
Okay.
eating eel or
So a study of 2,000 Inuits in Greenland found that they had 0 heart disease, 0 cancer, 0 diabetes,
Zero everything.
That's their diet. So it's just something to think about. Okay, so that's what they were doing. They don't have the stuff that we have. Interesting, right? Okay. Long, healthy lives.
Did they say what their lifespan was? It longer than lifespan of people in industrial societies?
So the one thing, because this gets, so lifespan, I'll just spend just a minute. So this gets a little bit tricky, okay? The tricky part becomes is, we'll a lot of times we'll focus with lifespan, are we living to 75 versus 78, okay? Now the reason those numbers actually increase is not, it doesn't have to do with people who are living to 75 or 78. It has to do with the fact that we're having, no. As far as the kids, our kids are living, so they're not, you're having less deaths at say 2 years old, 3 years old, because that skews the numbers, okay? Because if I can keep the younger population to live to 50 instead of 2, that's going to make a big difference. If I have someone that's 100 years old, 70 years old, and 2 years old that passes away versus I have 70, 60, and 50, that's going to make the number a lot higher, okay? But yeah, I don't know the exact detail on that though, okay? Good question. So if we're going to heal from sickness and disease, okay, so these are some steps that can absolutely help, okay? So if you say got heart disease, if someone has cancer, if someone has diabetes, these are things that can definitely help the body get healthier, okay? So this is one thing that, again, not to deprive, but we want to try to eliminate things that turn to sugar quickly in the body, okay? There's one thing to think about, whitey, okay? White sugar, white rice, white flour, white milk, all the white stuff, okay? Even like in Europe, when they brought that over to the United States, that's when our country started having more problems, okay? Before that was here, we didn't have as much health problems, believe it or not, okay?
Well, I will have to say,
Mhm.
it seems that there's research that says that the people in Italy are a lot healthier than we do. They eat twice the pasta, they eat way more than they should, and they drink a lot, and they have high-fat diets and a lot of enriched pastas. Now, I don't know, I don't think it's because, I don't think their culture has more, or their countries refine food like we do, and that might have something to do with it. But they seem to have less heart attacks,
Yep, you're right
less diabetes. They live longer, and
There's two factors.
they eat bread with
Right.
just about every meal they have.
There's two factors. One, I think the activity level's higher, okay, just in general in the culture. But the other thing is what you're saying, you know, because if we increase the shelf life and things like that, we have a lot more preservatives, chemicals, things like that in our foods than they have
Versus
over
what
there.
they have, even
Yeah.
with the bread.
Because a lot of that stuff's just going to stay in the body. So,
And
yeah,
they,
I mean,
they
you're-
eat lots more vegetables. They also eat a small amount of pasta, and then they eat their meat, and then they have like several course meals, not just one big plate of pasta.
yeah, very different culturally, but yeah, a lot healthier. Okay, because when you're talking number 1, number 2, and you're looking way up top, who's the healthiest? Japan and France and Sweden, and those are the countries that are the healthiest number of health, and we're down at the bottom. So, like you said, but that's a good question. Good point. You guys ever heard of the word ketogenic? No?
Is that related to ketosis?
So, not all cancers, but most cancers, if someone had cancer, like if I had cancer, I'd go immediately on a ketogenic diet, okay? So what that means is you're basically eliminating everything that turns to sugar real quick, okay? So, unfortunately for that, it would be fruit and such like that. But again, all this white stuff, okay? Pretty much all your grains, your pastas, things like that. So you're sticking more with the other pyramid we talked about, with the vegetables, the nuts, the seeds, the proteins, things like that, okay? The reason being is your body, as far as like the sugar molecule, okay, it feeds cancer, okay? So this guy actually discovered this in 1941. His name was Otto Warburg. I think you guys, you know this. So he basically said that cancer can't live in an oxygenated environment, okay? It can't live. So if it has oxygen, it can't live. So the more oxygen we can give our cells, the better off. You're actually doing the opposite when you eat a lot of things like the sugar and such. You're making it have less oxygen, and actually the cells can feed off the sugar, the cancer cells especially. So just something to think about. Okay? Another thing is increase healthy fat, okay? Because you're talking about the different types of fats. So what are some examples of healthy fats?
Avocado, olive oil, coconut oil.
Avocados, nuts, seeds, coconut oil, fatty fish. You could do a fish oil supplement.
Mackerel.
Salmon, mackerel. Okay. So when we're talking about healthy fats, those are different sources you can get. Is olive oil as far as healthy fat. Okay. And again, fat actually can help your body burn fat. Okay. The other thing to remember, about 60% of your brain's fat and cholesterol, a lot of your nervous system is made of fat. Increase fruit and vegetable intake dramatically. Okay. Because again, if we're getting all those micronutrients, it's going to help bring down the inflammation. And also we're getting a lot of stuff that's going to have a lot of fiber as well. Okay, a lot of that's good for helping regulate your blood sugar. Water intake. So how much water should you drink?
A lot.
75% of your body weight.
68 ounces.
Yeah, a lot of people say about eight ounce cups. I'd say the best way to do it is take about your body weight, cut it in half, and that amount in ounces. Okay?
Oh, I didn't know that.
That'd be the best way. So for example, 1 gallon would be someone that weighed 256 pounds. Okay? Because it's 128 ounces. Okay, so if say a half a gallon would be about 130 pounds, which would equal what most people know about the 64 ounces. Okay. But water, again, so if your body can't live, if cancer and stuff like that can't live in an oxygen environment, what's the water molecule? H2O. Okay? So oxygen. So you're giving your body more oxygen. Vitamin D and vitamin C. So definitely supplementing with both of these. Okay? So vitamin D, we call it a vitamin, but for your body to actually make its hormones, okay, whether it be testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, it has to have vitamin D. Okay? So it's important for your hormones, but it's also important for your overall health and your immune system. The biggest benefit if you're talking about sickness and disease, vitamin D is going to keep your immune system strong. Okay? Then vitamin C, like when you're sick, a lot of people take vitamin C or take vitamin C before they get sick because, again, it prevents injury, helps decrease inflammation. That's the biggest thing with vitamin C. It helps combat inflammation. Like a lot of athletes that injure themselves or trying to recover from injury, they'll boost their vitamin C intake because it helps bring down the inflammation.
Does zinc do the same thing?
As far as for inflammation or just recovery?
Prevention from catching colds and
Zinc
getting
does, yeah,
sick.
because it helps boost your immune system. It helps with everything I said, inflammation, yeah. And it's a thing that a lot of people are deficient in. Yep. This is a tough one. Sufficient sleep, okay? And that can vary. For some people that might be 6, for some people that might be 10. Usually the range is about 6 to 10 hours for most people as far as sleep. But when does your body heal?
When you're sleeping.
When you sleep, okay? So if you never get enough sleep, your body and your cells can't fully heal. There's no way, okay? So we got to make sure that we're getting enough sleep so our body can recover properly. Extremely important, because if we're deficient all the time, we're just setting ourselves up for more inflammation, because it takes time for disease to be able to develop, okay? It takes time. So if we give it more time to go in this direction, the negative direction, we're giving more likelihood that it can happen. Here's another thing we're talking about, genes. We're genetically programmed to move, okay? So what that means, the more sedentary we are, a lot of people have desk jobs, you know, so you got to be able to break that habit, because our body is meant to move. If we don't move, we're not giving it that oxygen that it needs, okay? So there's a lot of different ways when I talk about getting the oxygen to prevent inflammation. So we got exercise, you got what you're putting in your body, you got staying away from something like sugar. There's a lot of, even our thought patterns. Our thought patterns can affect things like that as far as our immune system and whatnot, okay? Nerve system function, that's what we do with chiropractic, okay? Your nerve system controls your immune system, but we want to make sure that that's functioning at its best, because that controls everything in your body, okay? Huge. I don't want to get too much into this because it's a little complicated, okay? There's a couple you can see on you got your sheet, but so does anybody know what the word angiogenesis means? Probably not, right?
It's like an anesthetic or anti-inflammatory or.
You're thinking analgesic. Okay, you're right there. You're right there. You're close. You're close. Good job. Okay. So angiogenic, what it means is basically blood vessel formation. Okay. So with cancer, what it does, it'll form a lot of vessels. Okay. It starts forming a lot of blood vessels, more than just the regular cell. Okay. Because it's trying to grow, and what it does, it requires more blood vessels than the normal cell. So these foods are what's called anti-angiogenic, so they help stop that process, and they typically will isolate to the cancer cell, okay? But just a couple things like green tea, tomatoes, kale, cherries, turmeric, parsley, Kale's one of those just superfoods that has tons and tons of benefits and a lot of different things. And turmeric, you hear about that a lot now. It's really, really strong anti-inflammatory.
Kale chips count.
They could. Yeah.
Maybe.
No, it's kale. I mean, it's good. It's good. Okay. So at the bottom here, again, health. I have health equals deprivation. It definitely doesn't equal deprivation. Deprivation never works. Ever, ever, ever. Okay. So one of the things is we got to add in healthier stuff. So we've been talking about this. So this is our gateway to sickness and disease. Okay. So we have 1 billion cans and bottles of this consumed per day. Any idea what it is? This is in the world. 1 billion. Yeah. 1 billion.
That's crazy.
So check this out. Number 1 source of calories in America. Same thing.
Soda.
Number 1. So HFCS, that means high fructose corn syrup, sugar, artificial sweeteners, okay? Now as far as how they interact with the brain, there's a lot of studies that show they're actually more addictive than cocaine, okay? With the responses they trigger in the brain. So it makes you think trying to get off of sugar can be very, very tough, okay? So you gotta have a plan to be able to do that. One thing, if someone's trying to get off sugar, I'd always tell them you have to make sure you're eating plenty of fat, okay? Your body's gonna be a sugar burner or a fat burner. It's going to choose one or the other. If you're constantly giving it a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugars, it's going to be a sugar burner. You have to be able to convert that. So if you said, hey, I'm not going to add fat, but I'm going to get off sugar, it's going to be really, really hard for your body to do that. You have to give it the fat so it can actually become a fat burner and use that for fuel. Okay, so adding in that good stuff that we talked about. Nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut oil, olive oil, salmon,
So
things
you're
like that.
suggesting you start cutting your sugar down and start increasing your healthy
Yeah.
fat.
Yeah.
And then
I would
eventually-
actually focus probably more on adding fat before even cutting the sugar, okay? Because if you start to add stuff in, hopefully that'll cause you to want to reduce some of the other stuff.
Automatically,
I'd go more with
without
adding before depriving. Mm-hmm. Somebody have a question? No? There's your word, analgesic, okay? But sugar, so this is interesting. Sugar desensitizes you to analgesics, okay? So what that means is things like if people are taking the anti-inflammatories, whether it be Tylenol, Advil, by having a lot of sugar, it desensitizes your body so your body can't feel what the Tylenol and the Advil is supposed to be doing, okay? So you can just see how, if that's the one thing, like sugar is such a negative response to the body, it's just incredible, okay? And go ahead.
And because of the artificial sweeteners, the diet sodas are equally as bad?
Yeah, they're probably worse.
That's what I've heard.
So artificial sweeteners, this last one, because they trick our brains, okay? So what this means is, if I were to say have Diet Coke all the time, okay, what it does is going to stimulate my brain to actually think that I'm more hungry, okay? So what happens is I usually eat more, okay? That's number 1, just from the food standpoint, because it tricks your brain thinking that you actually need more, because that's what the addictive property of the artificial sweetener is, okay? The other thing is like aspartame, like the blue packets, like the equal type packets, it actually turns to formaldehyde in the body. So what's formaldehyde used for?
Pickling the body.
Preserving.
So it's just something to think about, you know?
What about stevia and
It's a better source.
agave?
I would say stevia better than agave. Okay. But
So you think stevia is better than agave?
it depends, you know, because the thing is, if you want to say get away from all the sweet stuff, I'd probably tell someone not to use any of it, okay? The difference there is agave actually obviously has calories, you know, because it has about similar calories to honey. Can stuff like that be good? It can, you know, so it kind of depends on what your objective is. Say your goal was to, hey, I didn't care about as much as my weight, you could probably use more agave. If you're trying to lose weight, I'd probably go more towards stevia. If you feel like you needed something like
But you
that.
feel stevia is a healthy substitute.
It's a good one. It's just for someone, if someone is really trying to get away from any type of, say, sugar addiction response, it can create that sweetness for the body a little bit, yeah. But
Okay.
it is a healthier alternative without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Rather than just pure cane sugar.
I would say, yeah.
What about honey?
Honey, the thing is, honey has a lot of benefits too, you know, so it's one of those things you just gotta, if you're saying, hey, I'm not quite as concerned, you know, maybe about my weight, or you can add some of it. You can add anything in, you'd still maintain your weight, but it is definitely a healthier alternative for sure, okay? Because there's a lot of benefits to honey, like like sinus and allergies, some people get great benefit from having local honey because everything from the bees in the area, so it's definitely a better alternative, okay? And actually, it can be a really good source for some people. So, yep, without a doubt. So this is a little bit off, but because we were talking about in the beginning, I thought it'd be interesting to have here. So this is, right here, this is Ritalin, okay? This is the chemical makeup of Ritalin, okay? And I know you probably can't see it. We have 15 nitrogens, 2 hydrogens, and just the chemical makeup. So this almost looks exactly the same with 15 nitrogens. You have a carbon. You basically have an extra carbon and an extra hydrogen, okay? That's cocaine, okay? So Ritalin, you know what Ritalin is?
It helps people with
Versus
hyperactive.
cocaine? They're that close. They're almost the same thing. Something to think about. With kids, okay, they've actually done studies with Ritalin versus omega-3 fats. The omega-3 fats do better in studies to help regulate, say, their behavior and such. With kids with ADHD and stuff like that, a lot of times as far as the brain, they're not getting enough fat because 60% of the brain's fat and cholesterol. So making sure they have that source because, a lot of kids, they want the sweet stuff and the sugary stuff, and it's something that a lot of times they just don't get, those healthy fats, which can ultimately affect their behavior. A lot of studies on that. 7 ways to slow your metabolism. Who wants it? Nobody. Okay. Consume too few calories. Okay. This is the problem a lot of people have because what happens when, let's say this, how many people went on a diet before?
No.
Okay. How many people are still on the diet? Okay. But the thing is, if I go on a diet, how long does it typically last? Your diet lasts forever? The same one?
I never get anywhere.
Okay, so you try another one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so typically not always the same one, but say, hey, I try this diet, then I'm on to the next one. Hey, that maybe worked a little bit. I lost 10, 15 pounds. But what happens? Well, I gained back 20 to 25. Well, how'd that work? Okay. A lot of times what happens is a lot of people cut stuff too much. Okay. They'll slow their metabolism way down. Say I accomplished that goal. Well, then I get back to doing what I was doing, I gain even more weight because you slowed your metabolism down too much. Okay. Because diets don't work. Okay. So that's where we just got to make lifestyle changes, or what's called lifestyle modification. And that's part of the goal with what we're going to talk about next time especially, okay? Consuming too few calories is a big one, okay? Always eating the same thing. I mentioned this last time, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way because having good patterns of how you go about it, like if I have the same breakfast and things like that, that's good because you establish patterns. It's if I always ate the same thing every day, my body just adapts to that, to a T. But if I'm switching things up, I'm having different vegetables on occasion, different meats, different fruits, things like that, it just keeps the different nutrition. Because you can become deficient in things if you're always eating the exact same thing. Okay, so it's like if I had the same thing, 3-4 times every day, type of thing. So that's what I mean by that. Eating too many calories too close to bedtime. This can be different for people with jobs that have, later hours and things like that. But you got to think about when I first wake up in the morning, my body's ready to go, okay? When I go to bed, what's my body doing? It's shutting down, okay? So if I have a bunch of stuff before I go to bed, what's my body want to do?
Stay awake.
Stay awake. It may cause you to do that, but it's going to store a lot of it, okay? Just like a lot of people don't have breakfast, okay? Most of the time, people who skip breakfast, they eat a ton before they go to bed. Not always. But they're like, so why can't I eat? I'm not hungry in the morning. Well, you just ate a bunch before we went to bed. So you got to try to transition a little bit of that food to the morning, okay? They actually show people that skip breakfast have over a 450% chance more of being obese, okay? So because when I start eating right away in the morning, I stimulate my metabolism, okay? My body wants to use that fuel, and obviously, hopefully can help with other things like focus and that throughout the day. Skipping breakfast, got ahead of myself, okay? Eating too few meals, that depends for some people, but the jury's out for a lot of people, but my belief is I think that if you can eat something every 2 to 4 hours, it helps stimulate your metabolism, okay? So just having the smaller, more frequent meals, because if I eat a bunch at one time, again, my body's going to want to store a lot of it. It's going to have that higher insulin response, so it keeps everything, keeps everything burning. Just like you're putting wood in a furnace, little by little, just to keep that thing moving. So if you're eating, say, maybe 4 to 7 times a day of different stuff, and it doesn't have to be full-blown everything, it could be apple and some almonds, something simple, then your body's going to keep that metabolism going. Too little fat, we've talked about that a lot. Fat's important for your body to be able to burn fat, having the right fats, like we talked about, just trying to implement those in. That'd be one key thing from tonight is when you go home, try to add some in. It might be something as simple as, if I'm cooking eggs or vegetables, that I cook it in, say, coconut oil or something like that, okay? Because it's just going to be something where I can add that in to get more of the healthy fat that's going to be beneficial in a lot of ways. Stress, okay? Who doesn't have stress? You have stress?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Has anybody heard of cortisol?
Yes.
Okay. So stress causes our body to release a hormone called cortisol. It's a stress thing. Okay. So what it does is the stress hormone cortisol causes, again, our body to want to hold on to stuff. Okay. So a lot of people go, well, I can't lose weight. Well, how stressed are you? Well, I'm stressed 100% of the time. Okay. We've got to find a way to bring that down. It doesn't matter if it's, say, a hobby or exercise or whatever it is, because we got to bring that down, because that can be a major barrier. Okay. Because the thing is, it might not just be the fact of the food. My body's in such a high rate of stress that it's trying to hold on because of the high level of cortisol. This is what we do a lot of times. This is what we do with the diets. So we got a little girl here trying to push the elephant. Good luck, right? Okay. So fat loss and muscle gain, okay? So eat sufficient amount of protein. Extremely important. You don't have to be detailed. Some people, I'm just giving an idea for some people that are interested. You don't have to be detailed to this as far as what I'm recommending, okay? But sufficient amount of protein for sure. It's going to increase that satiety factor. It's going to boost your metabolism. I have about 1 gram per pound of body weight. Some people say, hey, that's a lot. It is a lot, okay? Some people say, hey, it's hard on your kidneys. There's not really any study that shows that this kind of protein amount is hard on your kidneys, okay? Because the thing is, if you're going to take away a lot of the carbohydrate, okay, you got to be able to replace that. So fat and protein, you have to have more intake of that in your diet. Okay. Begin adding the healthy fat. Helps stimulate the metabolism. Nuts, seeds, avocados, olive oil. Over here I have grass-fed butter and beef. So the difference there as far as like the grass-fed versus the grain-fed is going to be the quality of the fat. Okay, so the thing is, your body's going to be able to utilize it a lot better. Okay, because the grain-fed stuff, not saying you can never use it, okay, but it is going to increase more inflammation in your body. So a real popular thing, has anybody heard of bulletproof coffee? You got one? Okay, so a lot of people put a couple tablespoons of grass-fed butter in their coffee in the morning, okay? It actually helps boost their metabolism. It's become pretty popular. Yep. Someone? Grass-fed butter.
I have a question. It does seem like we need a lot of protein, and I'm trying to add a protein shake. Whey, if we're trying to get away from dairy, we shouldn't be doing that. Should we be doing like a vegan protein?
It depends, because the thing is, like whey, like if you got like a whey isolate, okay, it's called, look on the label, it doesn't have very much lactose, okay? So I wouldn't be as concerned if you added that in as far as the dairy component, okay?
Do you actually recommend one specifically?
If you got most whey isolate, you'd be probably all right, because I mean, the one thing about the supplement industry, there's not a lot of regulating. So
Yeah.
the thing is, these companies, they can throw this price on there or this on there, and so I mean, yeah, but there is some things. But right now, if you want to talk to me more like in detail about it, but in general, I'd say just for now, any of them is fine. Okay, but we can go more into that because there is a difference, okay, in some of them.
Right.
But for now, I mean, just
Huge
in this
difference.
in this class, I just say,
Quality.
yeah. Okay. Talked about the water, okay? This is another thing that if you could add this in, if everybody could add this in, if you did this 365 days for a year, everybody would be dramatically healthier, okay? And what that is fresh fiber first. So for example, if I said I'm going to eat a meal, and let's say I'm going to have coffee and a donut, but I decide before I have my coffee and a donut, I'm going to have an apple, okay? And let's say you did that every day for the course of the year, would you be healthier at the end of the year?
Yes.
You would, okay? And hopefully you drop at least half the donut, okay? But the thing is, you would be healthier. So that's where it's not all or nothing. Trying to add things in is definitely a good way to start if you're trying to make changes, okay? Instead of trying to focus on removing things, if you want to remove the one thing, I would focus on the sugar, okay? But otherwise, I try starting adding things in. Same thing, any meal. Just try adding, I'm gonna have some fresh vegetables before I have a meal. It's gonna increase that satiety factor if you're looking to try to lose weight, okay? Because of all the fiber in there. It takes about 20 minutes for your stomach and your brain to signal that you're full. So guess what happens when you're really, really hungry? You can eat and eat and eat and eat, and you're like, oh, I don't feel full, I'll keep eating. It takes about 20 minutes. So it's something to think about. If you ate like a little bit, and give it a little bit of time or eat slow, your body can actually process that a little bit better. Okay? I'd minimize grains because it increases inflammation, okay? Which can, again, it can affect your muscle gain and your fat loss, okay? And then vitamin D3, like we talked about, vitamin D3 is important for testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, which is important for muscle gain and fat loss. So women get scared when you say the word testosterone, okay? There can be exceptions where, say, certain women may have too much or too little testosterone, but females have anywhere from a quarter to a third of the level of testosterone as a male in general. So it's not something where it's going to influence at that level. Okay? And then get creative. Okay, so to want to do things and make changes, we got to be able to do stuff that isn't boring for us. Okay, so I have a couple different websites on here just to kind of look at how I could go about making things a little bit more unique, whether it be recipes and things like that. The talk I'm going to be doing on the 29th, we're going to dive more into the food as far as recipes, meal plans, things like that. But we have to get the baseline and foundation first, all right? Just a couple things. I'm going to go through these quick. Okay, here's a couple nutrition myths. So salt, number one. So salt's bad. That's not true at all, okay? So I have a couple different brands, Celtic salt, real salt, Hawaiian red salt, Himalayan sea salt's another one. Salt has a lot of trace minerals. It's very important for your body, okay? Very, very important. We think of like iodized salt, that can influence the body in a negative way. If you have salts like this, it actually, the studies show it doesn't actually increase your blood pressure at all, okay? Very important with a lot of the, like I said, the trace minerals, which if you're working out especially, your body with all the sweat, you're losing a lot of the trace minerals. You want to make sure you're getting plenty of it in there.
So sea salt's not on your list.
Just general sea salt. That's one where, again, it's one of those things that's it's a better option, but there's better options because it's not going to be processed at all. If you get something, because some of those, again, with the marketing, they can be a little bit processed, so it strips it of the minerals.
You just go to like Whole Foods to get.
You can get these. You can get these anywhere. Like if you went to Harris Teeter, if you probably go up to the Bilo. I mean, you could probably get. You should be able to get at least one of these two, just about anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they carry them most stores nowadays. If they don't, let me know. I don't want to tell you wrong info. Cholesterol is bad. Okay. Like I said, about 60% of the brain is fat and cholesterol. It's actually important. Okay. Now, it gets a bad rap, right? Okay, because what happens if you hear people say, "Hey, my cholesterol's really elevated"? What's the downside that you typically hear about with high cholesterol?
Heart attack.
Heart attack? Yeah, because you hear about the plaquing of the arteries, right? Okay. So the thing with cholesterol goes to an artery to heal it. Okay. So if I have a lot of inflammation, the job of cholesterol in our body, which primarily the LDL, the kind we consider bad,
Is to coat it.
is to coat it to heal it. Okay, because it's inflamed. And that's primarily the LDL, the kind we consider bad. So it has a purpose. It's going to heal the arterial, the vein, whatever, the tissue.
Acid buildup in the area, maybe having major inflammation around that general area.
Yes. So if I have a bunch of it that accumulates there, again, let me shut this door. It enhances the plaquing. But the thing is, the root cause is actually the inflammation. Okay, so it's how did the inflammation get there in the first place? Could it be I eat a lot of sugar? Could it be I have a sedentary lifestyle? That's what originally creates the inflammation. This is actually a positive side effect. Your body's trying to protect itself. Okay, so it's just something to think about. More people actually die
From
of
lower
low cholesterol
versus higher.
than high cholesterol.
Hmm.
Yep. Okay. What time is it?
7:30.
Another one, this is a tough one for some people and I'll talk through this a little bit. So as far as soy goes, okay, the thing about soy is a lot of it's genetically modified. It's the most genetically modified. Go ahead.
My daughter used to.
We got trees, we got vacuum. I mean, we got trains, we got vacuums.
My daughter couldn't drink the regular formula when she was a baby. they, she couldn't drink the milk, and we have to give her soy. She developed such a bad allergy to soy that for years she had a tremendous diarrhea because nobody knew what was going on, and it was the soy.
Yeah, it's really, really hard for, especially for an infant, but it's hard for anybody. They've actually shown, this is pretty nuts, with soy formula, like if you have like a daily dosage of soy formula, okay, it's the equivalent, what it does for your estrogen in the body is about 5 birth control pills for an infant. It's crazy.
Yeah, she was very sick for a long time.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. So excess proteins harm your kidneys. That really hasn't been proven. Another myth is, because we used to think, it doesn't, like you might hear people say, hey, it doesn't matter what I eat. You know, if my genes are going to play out as they're going to play out. It does matter. Every step matters. Every step that you're doing matters, okay? Not here to offend anybody, okay? But vegan diet is ideal as a nutrition myth, okay? Is there any vegans? But I'm not sure. I don't need to point anybody out. I shouldn't have said that, okay? But the thing about, like, as far as the vegan diet, this is why it's not ideal, okay? Again, about 60% of your brain's fat and cholesterol. They actually show when they look at our Paleolithic ancestors, or as we developed, our brains actually got bigger, okay? The reasons our brains got bigger is we started to eat more animal protein, okay? Because the animal protein had a lot of omega-3 fats, and that's what caused their brain size to enhance, okay? So the problem can become is if I'm vegan or I don't get any of the good animal fat that's important, it actually shows in studies it can decrease the size of my brain, okay? Now, a way to combat that is, you know, you could supplement with an omega-3 supplement, okay? Just something that, you know, just to think about, I'm not, again, I completely tell you guys, go do your own research, because I just want to give you some information so you can make, you know, hopefully decisions or look into things yourself, all right? All calories are created equal. This is the thing. Weight Watchers is considered the most successful diet program in the world. And why is it considered successful?
People are losing weight.
Because people lose weight.
They eat everything.
Then they gain it back.
They will gain it back, yes, okay?
Yes.
But the reason it's considered successful is it's portion control, okay? Because I could eat Snickers for a week and that's all I eat, because that is on the Weight Watchers program. Yes, okay? Is that healthy? No, okay? But it does teach that portion control, but that's why it's considered the most successful. I definitely would advise of that, okay?
Oprah eats bread every day on it.
Oh, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole
Gained
nother
the
story.
weight back, too.
Yeah, she'll gain it
I
back.
don't want
She'll
to
gain it
push
back. A lot of another thing, people who use this thing, and I don't know if everybody uses this, but it's just something if you like used a trainer or something, people use something called a BMI score, okay? All that is your height versus your weight, and you get this number, okay? But with that number, 90% of NFL would be considered obese. So Cam Newton would be obese.
I'm glad I don't use
Does Cam Newton look obese? I mean, so it's just something just to think about if you hear this BMI score, okay? Don't use that, don't let that be a dictator of your health. I'm gonna go through this in the next talk, okay? We're gonna end with this, okay? There's definitely no supplement, magic pill that's gonna make you healthy, okay? You just gotta understand that, because stuff comes out every month, every day, every year, that hey, this is the new fad, this is the new thing that's gonna get us healthy. It's one step every day, okay, is going in the right direction, and obviously we can go in the other direction. We're gonna make missteps, we're gonna go back and forth. You always gotta make sure that you forgive yourself if you make the missteps, because it's not just a, hey, I'm gonna continually climb, it's gonna be, you know, a roller coaster at times, and that's all right, okay? You just gotta make sure you do the best you can each day, okay? But again, our bodies are created to survive and to thrive off of what is placed on the earth, okay? We have a lot of things that are modified in certain ways, a lot of chemicals. I saw this one thing that had it was like, I think McDonald's strawberry ice cream. And it didn't have anything to do with strawberries, and it didn't have anything to do with milk at all. It doesn't have strawberries or milk in it. It was like 41 different chemicals. So we got to think. I mean, if you had it one time, is that going to be detrimental forever? No. But the thing is, if we have a lot of that, obviously it's going to make some steps in the wrong direction. Okay.
Well, I think you have to know yourself too. You know, if you give yourself that hall pass, well, how likely are you going to be to go
You do.
back there? So those little mints at Olive Garden. I find
There's-
that if I have one, I want 100.
And that's the
So
thing
it's
is
just
there's-
like, don't even go there.
These are all little things that you can implement what you want. You can implement what you don't want, but everybody's different. Okay, so you have to know your body. You may have to test some things. Maybe your body actually needs a little bit more grains than somebody else for energy levels. Everybody's body's just a little bit different. Okay, so you gotta test this. I wish I could say, hey, this is the magic choice for you. It's not. Okay, it might be for that person, but it might not be for this person. Okay. We have about 75 to 80 trillion cells in our body. Okay. They do two things. They're focused on either survival or growth and production. If you can get your cells to focus on growth and reproduction, you're going to live a healthy life. If they're focused on survival, because they're battling things like being sedentary, eating sugar, things of that nature, life's not going to be so great. Okay, so we just got to try to focus doing everything we can to try to go as much as we can in the right direction. Okay? So 3 things you can do, just leaving here. Number 1, up your water. Okay, simple. Do the fresh fiber first thing. Okay. The other thing is to try to add healthy fat. Okay, coconut oil is phenomenal. Okay, you could add avocados. You could add nuts or seeds. Just try adding that stuff into your diet. It's going to increase your satiety factor, your feeling of fullness. It's going to help jumpstart your metabolism. Things like coconut oil and the healthy fats, they're great for a lot of people, like skin conditions, even things like that. Having more of the healthy fat can help. So, just things to think about. Has anybody ever heard of like having like bone broth where you use like, especially if you can use like grass-fed beef bones, things like
Yeah,
that?
you take the leftover
Really a
bones and
diet.
stuff and you make a stock out of it.
So something like that, because this is interesting. A lot of women will appreciate
And it's soup
this.
starters
Okay.
and things like that.
A lot of women will appreciate this is that you get a lot of collagen from that. So a lot of people put like creams on their skin with collagen, okay? It's not even close to as efficient as being able to have something like that you can intake because of what it can do for even something like your skin, but a lot of other beneficial properties, but all those little things that add up. Okay.
You didn't say anything about dairy.
Dairy? So the only thing I said was the white, just a little bit. So yeah, the white milk, white rice, white pasta, things like that. So the thing as far as dairy, some people can get away with a little bit. For most people, I would actually say to try to avoid it, okay? Because dairy creates a lot of mucus in the body, okay? Now there is a difference here, okay? So if you were to get something that was more natural, so say you were to get something that was from like a grass-fed cow, like grass-fed butter or grass-fed dairy, that's different, okay? Because the thing is, what happens with stuff like that is because it's from a more natural source, it doesn't create as much of that mucus production in the body. I know it gets complicated.
You know, like whole milk,
Like non-pasteurized.
non-pasteurized.
Yeah, I mean, that's because the thing is, I didn't want to say that because that brings up a whole other conversation, but that is more ideal.
Yeah,
As
but
long-
they say that beef that is from grass fed
Mhm.
beef, it has more omega-3.
Yes, that's your key right there. And it's the types of fats that you get from the grass-fed is much, much better for your body, okay? Because it prevents that inflammation from occurring. Because most disease, it gets created because we get all this inflammation in the body. So if we can keep the inflammation down with just small changes, if you say, hey, I'm gonna leave here tonight, and I'm gonna add in 1 tablespoon of coconut oil a day, you made a change for the better, you know? And it's just being able to take those small things and be able to make those changes.
What about almond milk?
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of almond milk.
That's what we're doing.
I find
Yeah.
if I eat fruit and cottage cheese in the mornings or snacks,
Mhm.
it's better that way.
Say what?
It keeps you fuller. Fruit and cottage cheese.
Mhm.
Well, you were saying apple and nuts. So anytime you get a protein and add a healthy sugar, a natural sugar, it keeps your blood levels. I mean, sugar.
Even.
Yeah, your sugar levels.
So we're
up.
going to go more into detail on that come next time, okay? Because the thing is, we could go nutrition. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, okay?
I just want a personal question for
Yes.
you. What are you doing? You're doing gluten-free, right? What have you chosen to be your thing?
So pretty much what you see that triangle for the most part. I'd probably say, and this brings up another thing, okay? If you can do, because I'm probably pretty close to this, if you can do about 80-20 with anything in life, you're going to be good, okay? So this thing is, if you say, hey, I can do that about 80% of the time, and I give my leeway for the 20% that I go out and say I'm going to socialize with friends and things like that. Because there's another component with your life that say, hey, if that makes me depressed and I can't socialize and enjoy that, then that's a whole other situation. So you want to make sure that you have that balance. So if you can do right about 80% of the time, for most people, okay, and this isn't for everybody, but if you do right about 80% of the time, I'd say the other 20% of the time, you can kind of have some. And we're going to talk as we go to the next talk. So what I'm doing on the 29th, because I'm leading into that, okay, because I keep on talking about the next talk, we're going to talk a little bit more about the food, okay? So we're going to go through some different meal plans. If I want to gain weight, if I want to lose weight, if I want to maintain my weight from a healthy standpoint, recipes, okay? Where to go for recipes, what to eat at restaurants. So a little bit more detail when we're talking about these foods and how to pull it all together.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you all for coming in. Hopefully I got something out. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yep. Sorry about Ohio State. I didn't mean that.
I did.